Talks with Damon. My special guest today is the amazing Paul Seligmann from Miami, Florida. It is so good to see you. Now, we're going to talk more about your background, because I don't know if you're from Miami, Florida.
Well, yeah, I am. I am as close to being from Miami, Florida as you can be.
Wow. Well, we are on location today in Chicago, Illinois. We're both here for the Biomedical Medical Summit. Tried saying that the PrEP Summit, in other words. And I grabbed Paul and made him come up here to my bathtub to have a talk with me. But also because I've been an admirer of your work and so many things you have done to contribute to our community over so many decades. And I was like, please.
Vice versa. For me, you've always been a hero. He's a hero of mine. And so
you are amazing.
For us.
You are amazing. And we've got the Sheriff Duck with us as well to contribute. So part of the reason why I wanted to do this series was to spotlight the efforts and accomplishments of so many people kind of behind the scenes who, in my opinion, don't always get the acknowledgement or appreciation that they deserve for what they've done.
Oh,
and you're one of those people.
Thank you. And I'm willing to be naked for it.
And he got to talk naked. So let's talk about it. So first of all, I want to ask you, what do you like most about your body?
What I like most is my strength and my flexibility.
Okay.
Yogi here.
You do yoga?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I was a yoga teacher for a long time.
Ooh.
So part of the trajectory of how I actually became involved with PrEP, it was 2014. A friend of mine who was working for the health department, I had just moved back to South Florida. I'd been living in Atlanta briefly, and he asked me to go and film a public forum about this new thing, and I hadn't heard about it.
In 2014?
In 2014.
Right. Okay.
Somehow, even though I was always up on whatever was going on with HIV, I hadn't heard about it. Now, backtracking, you have to understand that I was 28 years old when the doctor told me, you probably have about 3 weeks to live, get your affairs in order. And I'm 64 now. So I'm a longtime survivor, and anything that I can do, any way that I can help people from going down that path, I'm there. That's what led me to it. That's how I got involved with it. And what I couldn't believe in the beginning was how was it that this was going on, and it wasn't on the news, and it wasn't on the television, and it wasn't in the newspapers, and it wasn't front page.
That was exactly my, how is this possible?
Yeah. How is this?
Yeah.
And no one's saying anything about it.
Yeah.
And for the first year or so when I was working in the field, I talked to people about it, and they looked at me like I had black beans coming out of my mouth in a volcano-like way.
I know that look.
Yeah, I'm like, huh? And so I stuck with it. Little by little, people started to try it and get on it, and they saw the point, and it was very difficult, and there was a lot of insurance pushback, and there was a lot of medical pushback. Then in 2015, when the Kaiser Permanente study came out, the day afterwards, the day that it was published.
What study? What did this study tell us?
That study told us that I think it was 700 young men on it for 2 years, and zero conversion.
Zero people.
That never happens. That never happens.
Rarely ever in science.
Never in science happens.
No.
And so they thought it must be propaganda, it must be a bad lab, it must be, but it wasn't.
Yeah.
And people started to understand what it was that we were talking about with PrEP and what it could possibly entail.
Right.
So,
and that was significant because these weren't people in a research trial. These were sluts in the real world.
Yeah.
Taking PrEP, having a lot of sex, having a lot of fun, and still not a single one of them became HIV positive while using PrEP as prescribed.
And the following morning, I had a line, people waiting, and I had to really rack my brain and speed things up and make it easier. And the first order of business was to sell the doctors.
Wow.
I had to sell the doctors. I had to make sure that the clinic where I work, the doctors were all in line. And eventually, and it took a lot of different pieces for it to happen, but we got to the point where we started doing same-day PrEP, which was the goal.
Same-day PrEP. That's amazing. PrEP. So tell people what same-day PrEP is.
That means they walk in, see the doctor, leave with medicine in hand.
Wow.
It has to be easy. Yeah. That's the thing I always said. It has to be easy. Yeah. This is well care. You know, people can think, okay, so do I really need to go through all this? Really? I'll just try condoms. I'll have less sex. I'll be good. That's what they say
Good.
to themselves. I'll be good.
Interesting.
Uh-huh.
Wow.
And luckily, one of the things that came out of our recent epidemic with COVID was people understood that being good has nothing to do with it.
Yes.
These are microparticles.
Yes.
So the CDC finally got wind of this and understood. All of us have been trying to make them change their attitude. They keep talking about bad behavior. 40 years, they're talking about bad behavior. And I think the idea of us using condoms, which is technology from the 1700s, really, is maybe once in a while, but every single time it's not realistic.
Yeah.
That a man is going to use a condom every single time he has sex, even when he's half asleep, even when he's had 5 glasses of wine. No, not going to happen. It's not realistic.
And if it was realistic, we wouldn't be having this conversation in 2022. You know, because I worked for a lot of these or volunteered for a lot of these organizations in the 90s that said if everybody would use a condom 100% of the time, we would eradicate HIV by the year 2000.
Yeah.
And clearly that didn't happen
That
because
didn't
people did not use condoms 100% of the time. In Florida, what was the resistance that you were getting from medical communities about this biomedical intervention?
Well, it's real simple. The medicine that we were using was a medication that we had used for treatment. And in treatment, in combination therapy, we saw a lot of problems with that medicine.
With Truvada.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we saw problems with that medicine, and I took that medication for treatment. It was a hard medicine. In combination with the other things that I was taking, it was rough. So we needed to make sure that by itself it wasn't doing this.
Yeah.
But the thing that really opened my eyes on it, and I started to relax a little bit more about it, was that one of the companies did studies in our population, and a lot of us have had steroids to look big and buff and beautiful, and those are really bad to your kidneys, your liver, your bones, your bone density. And so when we also add in some party drugs that do havoc on our bones, our kidneys, our liver, we start to see the pattern. Okay, so it was being blamed for a lot of damage, but a lot of the damage wasn't just from that. So, going back to the conversation of good behavior, bad behavior, when the CDC realized that 30% of the guys who become HIV positive were considered low risk for HIV infection, that means that their standard is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And the conversation has always been about behavior, but that's a wrong conversation. The conversation should be about prevention and prevalence. So if you're sexually active in a hot zone, you're exposed. You're going to be exposed. And if you don't use tools like PrEP and condoms, then you're just being silly. So we stopped having the conversation about bad behavior. Oh, you need to be on PrEP because you have so many sex partners. That's not positive. That's also stigmatizing.
Mm-hmm.
And it creates more acting out. I don't know how you are, but if you tell me not to do something, I'm going to do it twice.
Oh, you know it. I'm a Taurus.
Oh,
you try to tell me not to do something, I'm going to prove you wrong.
Yeah. And I've got a Taurus moon, so I know.
Yeah, no.
That's
Okay.
the emotion.
All right.
Like, tell me no some more, tell me no some more.
Yep.
Exactly. So,
It's a blessing and a curse, I tell you.
yeah. So, that change, I think, will open doors.
Yeah.
That change, that little change, is going to change the narrative. The other thing that happens is every time I do a presentation on PrEP, and I remember I did a bed talk, like we were talking before. A lot of my friends have done TED Talks. I did a bed talk. And after the bed talk, and there were about 115 people in that room, 5 girls in the back. They came to me at the end and said, is there anything like that for us?
It's like, yeah, it's called PrEP.
But they're not getting the message.
Right.
We're telling the message wrong.
Right.
We're not making it clear to them that PrEP is also for any human being.
Right.
So it's not just for gay men.
Right.
And this is one of the things we have to understand, that we don't reach everybody, and we're not going to get this done.
Right. What is a bed talk?
A bed talk is on a bed.
Uh-huh.
in a room.
Uh-huh.
And you talk about,
Like how many people?
I had about 100 people.
In your bed?
No, outside. I'm on the bed.
You're on the bed.
I'm on the bed.
They're outside.
They're outside.
Okay.
They're watching me on the bed. And I did a reverse striptease. I had 6 layers of clothes and I kept taking clothes off until I was in my pajamas.
Love that. Oh my gosh. See, I mean, you're probably like you're someone who just gets in there, who dives in.
Yeah.
Like,
But that's what you have to do.
Wow.
I remember at one point I did a thing, I think I sent it to you. I did a bad singing and bad dancing, tap dancing.
yes.
I took tap dancing classes to get the point across that 1 pill a day keeps HIV away. And I had an entire audience at a ballet performance singing it with me.
Wow.
And that's what it is. I wanted to get the message out there. I went on TV. I did things that I'm not comfortable doing. I didn't care.
Uh-huh.
You know, and I performed stuff that I'm not usually doing. I'm usually behind the scenes. So I don't care, but that's what it's going to take to get the message out. I'll do it.
That's so incredible. So I love that because you are someone who you don't just talk the talk, you walk the walk, you get in the tub, you go where people want to hear the message. It's okay. I want to go back to what you said earlier about getting a diagnosis of HIV when you were the age of 28,
Yeah.
which I'm trying to do my math, so I can't really do math right now, but I believe is like
85.
1985. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is 1985 when very little is known about HIV and AIDS, and we're certainly more than a decade out from having any treatments, like significant treatments.
Really, right.
So what was that like for you to hear that news?
It wasn't great, I can tell you. And it was also kind of comical. I'm a writer, so I'm always looking for material. And that's a saving grace of mine, because some of these situations, other people would have been devastated and they wouldn't have been able to get up. Me, I found the comedy. I found the comedy in it. So when I was parked in the car, all the girls who worked in the office were waiting for me by the window. And when they saw me, they were calling the doctor over to show him that I had arrived. Not a good sign.
Usually not.
Not a good sign.
No.
The doctor called me and says, you have to come, I have to see you in person. Not a good sign. So I kind of knew what was going on because my partner at the time...
Your partner was living with HIV or AIDS?
No, he had AIDS.
He had AIDS.
He had AIDS and I had just gotten him out of the hospital.
Sorry, I'm sliding around.
Yeah.
Okay. All
I
right.
had just gotten him out of the hospital and gotten him back to the point where he was climbing up the stairs to get to the bedroom without too much assistance. So I thought, okay, it's time for me to get the test and know what I have to deal with. When I got home, the drive home was very bad. I'm going to tell it to you as melodramatically as it was. There was this screeching sound coming from my radio that I couldn't get the dial, no matter how I twisted it, it didn't go away. And I couldn't see, no matter what setting I put my windshield wipers on, because it was just raining so hard. At a red light, I looked in the rearview mirror and realized I was screaming and crying. It was me. All right, so I had a slightly dissociative moment and then got home, got myself together and went indoors because I knew I was going to deal with Peter. And Peter was in the dark and Peter says, hi. And I turned on the lights. Why are you sitting in the darkness? Because I went to see the doctor. He was English, so he wasn't forthcoming. So I said, and that meant, and that was, what did he say? He said my T cells were at 40. The week before they'd been at 14. So I said, that's an improvement. He says I'm going to die. And I thought about it for a second and there was a beat. I said, you know what that means? I said, it means I'm going to die. I said, no, I think, Peter, it means that you and I need new doctors. I had just been told that I needed to get my affairs in order and had 3 weeks to live from a doctor who had become a doctor because his knee went out and he was a football player. And he gave me a prescription for AZT so strong that it would kill everyone around me, not just me. So I knew he wasn't the top of his class.
Yeah.
All right? And the next day I wrote a fax and I sent it out to all the practitioners in town who were dealing with HIV patients. And I said, how long do I have to prepare an estate for someone who has a complicated estate and these lab values mine? The doctors wrote back. They were very sweet. They wrote back 2 months, 3 months, 3 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks. And one of them said, leave me alone because I'm taking care of my patients and I'm really busy. She's still my doctor.
She's still your doctor
She's
today?
still my doctor today.
Why?
Because she wasn't an all-knowing asshole.
Okay.
And I did not need an all-knowing asshole.
Okay.
I
So
needed
she wasn't
someone-
trying to placate you or reassure you?
No, she was going to be very honest.
Yeah.
She'd get my blood results and ask me, how are you feeling? I was kind of tired. I said, well, I hear your schedule is pretty awful. No wonder you're tired. I said, what are my T-cells? Oh, they're bad.
What were they? Do you
Bad.
remember?
14.
Your T-cells.
My T-cells.
Your T-cells.
My T-cells were 14. So, and I weighed, at one point I weighed 115 pounds. And
Wow.
I'd get up and I'd think, God, the kitchen's so far away, but I'm hungry. Like, ugh. So, and then the triple cocktail came out and it worked.
Well, that was about 10 years after that.
At one point, very soon after, I was weighing 114 pounds.
Yeah.
And then I went from 114 pounds to, there was a naked muscle man in my bedroom.
Uh-huh.
I didn't know who that was. They had me on testosterone, globulin, oxandrin. I got huge.
So you're saying after the treatment meds came out in 96,
Mm-hmm. And
got
then
on those and
the enhancements.
the enhancements.
And to make you feel strong, to make you look strong, to give you some strength. So if you did get sick again, you had reserves.
Right.
That was the idea, because all of us were badly wasted. And that's when I looked in the mirror and I didn't know who that was. So right now, I'm going through a little bit of that again as everything shifts and changes. With my 60s, I have to the 35-year-old I was is not there anymore. But it's okay, because I was that 35-year-old.
Yeah.
I was that 25-year-old. I have to remember that.
Yeah. Before the treatment meds, did you get sick
Yeah.
with AIDS?
Yeah. I had MAC, which was it was my own fault for gardening without gloves. And so
What's the connection? What's MAC?
MAC is a kind of, it's a pathogen found in the soil. It comes from birds and it transfers to human beings from getting dirty in the soil. So I did, it got into my bone marrow and my red blood count went down and down and down and down, and I was really, really run down.
And this was from gardening.
Yeah.
See, this is the thing that I want people to understand, that I think a lot of people don't know, is that something that someone without a compromised immune system might take for granted. Like, sure, you want to garden? Yeah, you touch the soil? Yeah, it's no big deal. That's something people take for granted.
Right.
But your experience of that was that actually became a danger because of your compromised immune system. Dirt and the soil and whatever the birds were doing to it hurt you.
Yeah.
That's
And
what MAC was.
what was interesting was that the doctor that I had working with my doctor was a young man, very smart. He caught on immediately. Let's try giving you this. Within 5 days, I was again myself. And I think the other side of the gardening conversation is that people who are sick, whether it's cancer, lupus, MS, HIV, whatever it is that they have, if they find ways to be connected to being alive, it's a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good thing. We had a seminar we used to do in the beginning of the epidemic, started by a young man I know who was very unique. He had the capacity to think original thoughts. People came from all over, academics came to talk to him because he had original thoughts, which I don't know that you and I do. But he had this idea that people who are given a diagnosis of HIV lose the capacity to visualize themselves in the future.
Mm.
They lose the future. So if you make them create the future for themselves, it creates an opening to which they stay well. So we did this, and I filmed them, I talked to them, interviewed them. It was really interesting how a lot of the young men who went through that process are still around today.
The people who could see their future. You know, that's so interesting. That is so similar to what Viktor Frankl wrote about in Man's Search for Meaning,
Right.
about surviving concentration camps. That
Exactly.
those that could foresee the future
Right.
were far more likely to survive.
Exactly.
Wow.
For me, when I was at my sickest, I would write 5 pages in a day. It would take me the whole day
Wow.
to write 5 pages, but I would sit down and I'd write 5 pages. And then at the end of a couple of months, I had a screenplay. and I could show it to people. And I had something that I had done that I could imagine myself directing or helping produce, or what it would look like to have it done. And even just the act of the imagining of it was sufficient to get me better. And as I was doing that part of it internally, the science world was doing it on the outside, so that the two converged, and here I am to tell the story.
That's amazing. 64 years old now,
Yeah.
and you were figuring this stuff out in your 20s and 30s.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Yeah. Wow. Now, you mentioned I know filmmaker is one of the many, many things one finds on your resume of life. Tell me more about your filmmaking.
Well, right now it's by sheer weight of circumstance and money, it's been shorts, but I've written a couple of screenplays, series. I've got a couple, and I was working with a very, very smart agent, and he was one of our losses to COVID, and very deep, painful loss for me, plus you know how hard it is to get an agent, and yeah, and so I'm looking for an agent, but I have a trilogy of vampire novels that I think are kind of fun. The traditional world had a hard time with them because the main character is a Latino who is doing everything he can to stay awake because he has nightmares when he falls asleep. The moment he closes his eyes, he has nightmares. And so it's Grindr, Scruff, Manhunt, Adam for Adam, and speed. Every kind of speed he can get his hands on to stay awake. Or fentanyl to put him out. So he's not exactly who you would think is going to save the world, but someone has to.
So this is the protagonist. Wow. Is this available for public? Okay, this is still a work in progress.
It's a work in progress. The other one is I wrote a novel. I gave you a section of it to read called Lazarus Rises. It's kind of like Tales of the City but Miami Beach from 1999 forward. And I'd love to turn that into a series. I've got one that I love, which is called Cuddles. We won some awards for this, for the short. Imagine that the L Word married Blackish or I Love Lucy. So it's got a little bit of sitcom, kind of gentle, fun sitcom, and it's a lesbian world. So it's about a lesbian dating app. And my daughter, who is a family, decided to help me with the name for the app. It's called Cuddles.
Cuddles.
We wouldn't have that.
We
Gay men wouldn't have an app called Cuddles. We would have
many of the ones you described. Yes.
the other ones.
But she presented that as a fictional
Yes,
representation.
exactly. Like this would be the thing.
Interesting.
Yeah. So everyone in America would be dying for Cuddles if I had my way. And I want to have this, I want to give it away. I want to give it away to women and let them direct it, finish it. I'm going to give them the overview, the cast, and let them tighten it up. The other one I'm working on is right now a science fiction piece.
Mm-hmm.
I think I hear a lot about how lonely we are. Everyone is very lonely. And we want AI to be sexual.
AI, artificial AI.
So what happens if you have AI that's sexual, that gives you what you want,
Mm-hmm.
has enough deviation built into it to surprise you?
Mm-hmm. What happens?
Bite you when you say, I don't want to be bitten there. Bite me there. Bite you there. And you're interacting with them. What would happen?
What would happen?
That's the whole
Is it
premise.
okay?
That's the film.
Wow.
That's what I'm working on right now. Yeah.
What else is at this time in your life giving you meaning and in a sense of purpose during this incredibly turbulent moment in
In the
history?
midst of this, my family has managed to stay together. We've been through some very, very hard stuff. My sister's battling cancer. My stepson has 2 boys. I've got grandchildren. I'm a grandfather.
Your grandpa!
I'm a grandfather.
Oh my goodness. Wait, how many children?
I have 2.
And how many grandchildren?
2. Yeah.
Is everybody in Florida?
No. My son and his wife are up in Troy, New York, and my daughter and her soon-to-be wife are in Massachusetts. It's the Belle of Amherst.
Okay.
Amherst. They went to Amherst. They were in Boston, and now they're teaching in Connecticut.
And you're from New York?
No, Colombia.
Okay.
Colombia.
From Colombia.
Bogotá.
Bogotá.
Uh-huh. I'm from Bogotá. I can't
What?
get outside.
How old were you when you came to the
7.
U.S.? Why? What brought you to the U.S.?
Oh, a kidnapping.
What? Okay, I gotta hear about this. You were kidnapped.
Yeah.
Okay. Can I ask you about that?
Yeah. The kidnappers didn't realize they'd taken a devil. I was a 7-year-old devil. So the way they got me was we had a new driver, my bodyguard. The new driver, I noticed, had been making Google eyes at the new house girl. So I went out and very coyly said, Matadana, that was his name. Isabella has some hot chocolate for you. It's really cold today. Do you want to go in? He went in. I went out on my tricycle on the street, which I knew I was not allowed to do.
In Bogotá.
In Bogotá. And at the time, my grandfather was the Minister of Elections, and the previous dictator, in a Trumpian move, had been crying foul that his party was robbed of their win, that he should have won, and he wanted a recount. And his party was forcing it by trying to get me and trying to get the family.
Trying to get your family?
Yeah. So,
to do what?
For him to call a recount and say that he won. That was the point of the kidnapping. So I had an experience when I was very young. When I was about 4 years old, I went to have my tonsils out. And I was scheduled for 9 a.m. At 9 a.m., at 8 a.m., the boy who was going in started screaming, I'm going to make a number 2, I'm going to make a number 2, I'm going to make a number 2. If you understand the cultural differences of Colombians, they're very about body functions and about things like that. If you're in a bus and you lean over and I accidentally touch you, I'm going to be saying I'm sorry for 20 minutes. We have personal space.
Okay.
I live in Miami with Cubans who like to be 2 feet from you. I'm always walking backwards. I want 5.
Okay.
I want 4. No, I want more space.
Wow.
So what happened was that they did not take him in, they took me in. And this stayed in my memory. So I'm in a burlap sack, tied, and in the back of the car, in the trunk. I'm screaming, bloody murder, nothing. I start to scream. I'm going to make a number 2. I'm going to make a number 2. I'm going to make a number 2. They stopped the car. They found a bathroom. 2 guys tried to go in with me. I pushed them out, closed the door, locked it. Found a way to go up a pipe, out a little window, got my hands all bloodied, went up on top, and looked for people. Went from rooftop to rooftop until I found someone. I showed them my hands and said, I need your help. I knew my grandfather's telephone number. It had been drilled into me. I had memorized it. I called him, told him, 3 men, Hudson, this is the license plate. Devil, told you, devil.
Whoa.
Yeah.
And then what happened?
We were in Miami.
So your family moved you to Miami. Who else came with you?
Everyone, my father,
Everybody
my
moved to
mother, my
Miami.
sister, we all moved to
Because there was... Wow.
Yeah.
As a result of that kidnapping.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah.
I have never quite heard a story like that. Have you written about this?
In certain ways.
Okay.
In certain ways, I have. Everyone wants me to do a direct autobiography, but I don't want to do that.
Why?
I'm not. I'd rather do this in a fictional way.
Okay.
It makes better sense to me as a fiction. And the idea of being held against your will, being forced, all that, I've used that in other ways. The vampire trilogy is an interesting way that I got to use some of this. I also got to really complete my relationship with my father in it. My father died from Alzheimer's. And in the end, we couldn't talk to him anymore. There wasn't any way to resolve it. And I found that in fiction, I was able to resolve it where I couldn't do it in life.
Wow.
That's what makes it art.
Wow. Okay. All right. Wow.
So I bring everything I got to this conversation of getting people on PrEP.
Yeah.
I make sure that they have a choice, that they get to feel like they're the ones choosing, and get them access and make it as easy as possible.
And do you feel like U equals U has been part of that message as well?
To a degree, I think it's very important for people who are, for those of us who are positive, it gives me a lot of encouragement to know that the math is in my favor, that the likelihood of me becoming infectious with someone is not there.
Yeah.
And I have had it happen. Damon, I've had it happen where I go in for a medical checkup, which I do every 6 months, and there's been a change.
A blip.
It's more than a blip.
More than a blip.
And I didn't get a email about it. I didn't get a red dot on my wrist that lets me know that I'm infectious. And anyone I would have been with who wasn't in some way protected would have become infected.
So you're saying your viral load went up,
Yeah.
and you didn't have any way to know
No
it?
way of knowing.
Wow. Did the doctors have any explanation for why this happened?
No. And then it went back down.
With the same meds, or did
Same
they
meds.
change your meds?
Same meds.
Okay.
So there was a blip. And I might have missed those. I might have had too much other outside stress. I might have had a blip on something else. And that's what caused it. And this is why I like the idea of serodiscordant or magnetic couples both being on something. Each one is responsible for their well-being, though.
Yeah.
So I like people being on PrEP more than I like them waiting for the U equals U. I think that the two of them together, both of them participating in this, is more secure.
I think of it like peanut butter and jelly.
Yeah.
They're okay by themselves, but they're better when they're smushed
Yes.
together.
Yes.
But that's really helpful. That's the same reason why I think I recommend or encourage people to use PrEP, even if they are in a primary relationship with an undetectable partner. Not because of necessarily that the odds are against them, but because I think the agency and peace of mind that PrEP allows is really valuable.
It's very important for people to actually be the ones in charge of their own well-being.
Right.
And with condoms, there's always a conversation, but he didn't bring one. I didn't have mine. So here, that conversation was gone. And we're moving towards probably, in the near future, injectables and implantables as the norm. Those will be the norm. And I think that with those, there's even a higher level of adherence because it isn't about a daily pill. I'm waiting for a major perfume designer to come up with PrEP by, I'm not going to say anything. And that you're done.
Squirt in your face. Okay.
If it were up to me, I'd have blow darts. And there, PrEP. So I'd love for people to be able to access PrEP as easily as possible. I want the doctors to not be punitive. A lot of them carry over this punitive approach from dealing with sick patients. When we have a sick patient who doesn't take their meds, you wag your finger at them, you need to take your meds, this is how it works. And then they do the same thing with a well person, that doesn't work.
Right, it's a very different psychology to take PrEP versus a treatment medication, whether we're talking about HIV or diabetes or cholesterol. It is such a different psychology, and most providers, most doctors, because I want to say nurses I think are different, but I think most doctors don't understand that distinction. Maybe not, you think in Florida, is that not the case?
I have a lot of nurses on our staff. We have a lot of nurses, and nurses are very
Oh, okay. So that might be regional, because in New York, they're
sticklers for the rules.
very different.
Yes.
You know, and I know that a lot of the nurses I know through the Association of Nurses in AIDS Care, ANAC, are very much in favor of holistic treatment and working collaboratively with clients and really getting to know the whole person, not just saying, oh, here's a prescription and, you know, go take your
There is no
drugs.
one size fits all anything.
Right.
That's the fact.
Right.
Every human being is a completely new set of variables, and you have to be able to manage that. And you're right. The nurses in the Northeast are far more cool about this stuff, and they're gonna move and vibe with the individual.
Right.
I don't see that down by us. I've got some great nurse practitioners that I work with. I've got some great physician assistants, wonderful, wonderful physicians. I'm very fortunate to work in the environment that I do, but I had to sell them in the beginning. There were a lot of them who were like, I want to wait 3 weeks until I get the, doesn't take 3 weeks.
Yeah.
It takes 3 days.
Yeah.
So, but I want to wait, and said it's 3 days. And the amount of patients given in the ratio who have creatinine clearance issues is so infinitesimally small.
So small. And often it's because of all those other drugs you mentioned earlier, the steroids, the recreational drugs, that often shows up with a creatinine imbalance. And if you just kind of wait a day or two, it clears out.
Let me just add more protein powder to my daily smoothie because that's so much better for me. Since 1 heaping spoonful is going to make me big and strong, maybe 5 will do it better. No, it's going to harm your
kidneys. But then people get freaked out about Truvada. So, okay. So let's say the Biden administration comes to you and says, Paul, you're amazing. We love your work. We love your ideas. We're trying to do this whole end the HIV epidemic by 2030. And they say, what do you think we're doing wrong? What do you think we're missing? We need your advice. You would say what?
Normalize it.
Which means what?
That means make it everywhere. Make the conversation not about sexual, not about sex, but about sexual health. And sexual health conversation applies to everyone. Mm-hmm. What kind of sex are you having conversation needs to stop. Mm-hmm. We only need to ask that in terms of where to do STI testing. Mm-hmm. So if you're having the swinging from the chandelier type of sex that heterosexuals refer to, that's called anal. So then they use the swab for checking. And when they're not having that, they don't. And then they forget to mention, a tongue in there. Oh yeah, swab. Because it's contact. Everyone says, but he didn't ejaculate.
So what? With STIs, that doesn't really make a whole lot of difference. No. HIV, it can make a difference with STIs.
Not really. Not really. They're producing...
PrEP is very debatable in the HIV community, but there hasn't really been a lot of documentation of anyone getting HIV via PrEP.
I don't think there's been any studies of it.
There have been.
There have?
Well, yeah.
Okay.
Because there's really no documented cases in the 40 plus years that it's been studied about.
That's good to know.
And so many people freak out about pre-com. And it has never, at least in the literature, ended up in a documented transmission.
Okay. That's
so, not to say it couldn't happen, just saying in 40 plus years, we don't have any robust documentation. It never has happened. Whereas with ejaculation, whereas with STIs, that doesn't matter. You can easily transmit gonorrhea, chlamydia, even syphilis can be through skin contact. Okay, so back to you. So back to what the Biden administration would say. You'd say normalize this. Normalize this how?
Testing. Normalize testing.
Yes.
Normalize the prevention.
Yes.
Normalize testing and prevention as a 1-2. Here you go.
Yes.
You're negative to HIV. This is a good opportunity for you to do this. You haven't had a hepatitis B vaccine. It's a good opportunity for you to have it. You haven't had a hepatitis A vaccine. Let's get that done so that you don't have that. You don't have human papillomavirus. Let's get you in line to have one of those. Yeah. And right now we have a meningitis outbreak in Florida.
Oh my goodness.
In the gay community. Yes. So we're making sure that gay men who want it get it.
Okay, so normalize that conversation. Anything else you would say to them about how we could end the epidemic by 2030?
Preach it from the pulpit.
What's that?
Preach it from the pulpit.
Preach it from the pulpit. Meaning?
Science is God. Yeah. Science is not God. Mm-hmm. Make sure that people in their churches are promoting science.
Yes.
Faith.
Yes.
Faith communities are not being reached because they think that this is against Jesus. I'm sure that Jesus.
Then why is his name called out so much? If it's against Jesus, his name sure gets
yes.
said a lot.
Yes.
Yes. This is fascinating, Paul, and I'm still floored by the kidnapping story. I gotta say, I didn't see that coming. So thank you, thank you for surprising me. That's amazing.
People are often like they ask me about my sang-froid because I'm a bit cold-blooded when emergencies occur. Keep my head. And when I was a little boy, my grandfather was a lawyer, but he was also a surgeon. He would have me on a Sunday and we would go to the park, and then he'd get bored at the park, and so he'd take me to the operating theater where the medical students were doing operations and in the amphitheater, and I'd be watching, and he'd say, I don't think we should tell your grandmother about this. I said, you know those apples that I like, the ones from Chile? I said, yeah, the expensive ones, I went to them. And then he'd say, I don't think you should tell your mother either. He said, 4.
Because wait, you were saying
he was going to have to buy me apples.
Oh, okay.
In the platform, there's a human being with their guts outside of them. They're looking for bullets.
Okay, all right. Mm-hmm. That's what you were running
into. So a 4-year-old,
yes,
looking at this,
and you remember that.
Devil. That was a devil.
No. It's amazing. All right. So I want to say thank you so much for being here. Thank you for coming to my tub or coming to this tub in Chicago. I always learn so much from these talks. Yeah. And, you again are just one of these people who I see out there. I see showing up, doing the work, going anywhere where you're asked to go. The hotel room, the bathtub, the ballroom, the clubs, the bars, you show up.
The television.
The bathhouses.
The radio.
The radio. You show up.
Houses, not so much.
Not so much. Okay. You're one of these people that's about meeting people where they're at.
Where they are.
And I wish the Biden administration or anyone who's in a position of ending the HIV epidemic did consult with you and ask you about your thoughts, because you certainly have experience and insights and wisdom that I think would really get us to the end of this thing, if anybody really were to take that seriously, which I sometimes have my doubts about.
No, I think listen, we have the tools right now to really change the course of this, and we're making changes, we're making strides.
We have the tools.
We're making strides, and we have the tools, and a lot of them are being used.
Yes.
A lot of them are being used. Now, we just have to get it into further. One of the things I've done in our agency, we have a new program, which is all from home. If you have simple labs, I send you a box, you do it yourself.
Yep.
You get a telehealth, you get the medicine delivered to your house. You never have to come to the clinic.
Wonderful. Mm-hmm. That is how my PrEP stuff works with telemedicine.
Exactly.
It's mostly all at home.
Exactly. Yeah. And so for the person who has issues with having to be seen in a clinic or going to a clinic, this is a perfect way.
Yeah.
We also have the PrEP same day, and we're also now already starting to implement the injectables.
Yeah.
So
injectable PrEP.
PrEP and test. Treatment. Also treatment.
Right.
So we're doing both.
Beautiful.
And this is, you have to be up with the science. And you have to be paying attention to what the people need. Mm-hmm. And I think the administration right now has a lot of people there with their heart and head in the right place.
I think so too. It's been a while since we could say that, but yes, right now I'm with you. I think some of the people that are there are doing good things. I still have my issues with sort of the removal of pleasure and connection and spirituality and growth and all those things, that the reasons why people have sex that are still completely left out of this whole thing. But that might be a talk for another day.
That's a talk for another day, because when we have sex without connection, it's not good sex.
Mm-hmm. Well, HIV doesn't care, but no, the idea that all of these themes are removed.
I know, but if you have really great sex and you get chlamydia, oh boy. If you have really bad sex and you get chlamydia, that just is devastating.
Yeah.
It's nasty.
Wasn't even worth it. What's the point of that?
Yeah, and I think that we have an entire generation that, thanks to cell phones, doesn't know how to handle conflict. Yeah. So they put up with stuff that they shouldn't be. So they don't look like their pictures. That's not who the person is who said they were going to be showing up. And then they have sex with them anyway.
Wow.
Because it's easier than confronting them. So I'm all about having great sex. I think Kama Sutra is the way to go. I'm always talking to them about the fact that women have multiple orgasms. Mm-hmm. So do we. Mm-hmm. We're wired for it, but no one ever told you. And it goes down to the first time people masturbated. When they were little and they masturbated, it was by accident, it was stealth, and it was fast. So they touched themselves a certain way. And women don't touch themselves like that, women touch themselves like this. And they do this, and they have multiple orgasms with the same wiring.
Yeah.
So if we change how we approach each other, how we stimulate and touch each other, and then we have a full menu, because right now we don't have a full menu.
Full menu of sexual,
all the different ways of
pleasurable
sexual, yes.
Yes.
And then also make a connection. Look in their eyes. Keep your eyes open. Don't go into your movie in your head. You can visit the boys on men.com later. Look at the guy who's sitting in front of you. Have sex with him.
Yeah.
And if you're doing that, it's already going to be better.
Yes. There you go. So life advice, and this is from someone who's been there, someone who knows. One of the recent guests I had, where I'm learning a lot, and I'm 51, so I'm just starting to learn about breath and chakras and tantra, and that's just like a whole new field, because so much of my life and my work and my personal and private and professional life have been about HIV prevention and trying to find a message of pleasure through that. Well, this goes to such a different level, and I'm still learning about that. So, you know, I may have to have you back in the tub.
Oh, sure.
And have another whole discussion about breath, about chakras, and about all the levels of the body where we can have orgasms. Because most men and women are not used to learning about that, knowing about that, and knowing how to ask for it, knowing how to find that.
It's not a conversation people have. I've got a friend right now who's going through a divorce, who has been married a long time, and discovered at this point in her life that there were all kinds of things that were on the menu and she never knew.
Right.
She never knew. And she walks around with a smile from here to here.
Right.
You see me smiling.
Yeah.
All my photographs, you're going to see me smiling because I also know how to get there. So ear to ear. All right.
But it's a very different way of approaching pleasure. And again, once we feel agency and knowledge about pleasure, we have a better idea of how to communicate, whether that's through PrEP, you equals you. But then again, I find myself limited because I think about sex and talk as risk reduction versus all these other realms that we're starting to get into, which I think we will, as a generation of gay men that are aging, are going to start to pave the way to understand and learn about.
We're the elders.
Yes.
We're the elders. You're entering the age of being an elder. As an elder, we have the right and the privilege to pass on our learning and our knowledge and to let the new ones follow in our footsteps and go further, go beyond those. Accomplish everything they want and more.
Beautiful.
So I think that's the trajectory that's left.
Oh, that's exciting. Okay, on that note, we're going to hold there for now. If you like this talk on Tough Talks with Damon, push subscribe down below. If people want to follow your work or follow your ideas, how would they do that?
They can write to me.
Okay, and
my email will be
right. If you're watching on YouTube, the email will be right there, whatever email you give me. And let's just keep these conversations going. This is exactly why I wanted to do this series, was to talk with people about these novel approaches to health and healing and thriving and throbbing and aging and enjoying that we typically do not have. And I thought if we could do this in a bathtub, all the better. So thank you for helping me.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, everybody. Enjoy your day. Watch the next episode of Tough Talk down below. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.